Welcome to the Firefly Tutors TV podcast, where real teachers from all over the country discuss real solutions for parents and educators alike. Here's your host, Marissa Johnston.
Hello and welcome to The Buzz, brought to you by Firefly Tutors TV, where we talk to administrators, educators, and parents all across the country about current topics affecting school children today. Welcome to the podcast, Kathryn Starke. Kathryn Starke is a nationally recognized literacy consultant, reading specialist, former inner-city elementary school teacher, adjunct professor, author, and founder of an award-winning educational publishing and literacy consulting company. Starke is the creator of Tackle Reading, an annual philanthropic initiative supported by the NFL. An impressive resume, to say the least. Today, we are discussing tips to encourage a love for books and strengthen reading skills for all school-age students. Welcome to the podcast, Kathryn.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us a little bit more about you, your background in education, and the story behind Tackle Reading.
So I am a product of a family of educators. So my mom, it was one of 7 girls and 1 boy, and all of the girls were in education. So either a teacher or a librarian or a principal. And so obviously my DNA said I was going to be a teacher. And I have started teaching reading, for as long as I can remember. When I was 9 years old, I actually started a tutoring business out of my bedroom to tutor 5-year-olds that didn't know their letters and their sounds. So I was so excited to go to Longwood University, become an elementary school teacher. I taught 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. Then I became a reading specialist, then a district literacy coach, and a national literacy consultant today. I've also written some children's books, some resources for parents and for teachers. And really my whole world just is reading and writing colliding, and how to help families really get their kids excited about teaching reading.
That is fantastic. Tell me more about Tackle and its affiliation with the NFL. That is so exciting.
Thank you. So I'm still excited about it and surprised that it still happens. We, in March for National Reading Month, we just kicked off our 7th annual philanthropic event with the NFL. And so I wrote Tackle Reading as a resource for parents to get, quick motivational tips and ideas and activities to implement at home to help kids get excited about reading. And it involves stories from me as well as 45 contributing writers. Some are athletes in the NFL. Some are celebrities, like Dolly Parton's Imagination Library wrote for the book and shared what they do. Some celebrities, there's a country music singer that wrote a poem for it, and then just some really quick, great ideas from educators about how to do reading at home. And I have found that a lot of our reluctant readers happen to often be boys, and a lot of times it's boys who are sports fans. And so I tell, parents that I can tell children all day long, read for 20 minutes a night. It's going to make such an impact. But if an athlete in your, favorite team's jersey tells you to read for 20 minutes every night, it has a little bit of a greater reach. And so thankfully, the NFL, the 32 teams, a representative from the teams, whether it's a current player, a former player, a cheerleader, the mascot, a coach, everybody comes together on this one day to read in lower income elementary schools in their community every March. And I did it the first year to really celebrate Tackle Reading the book. And 7 years later, we're still celebrating the book and the initiative.
That is so cool. Oh my goodness. So, kind of changing gears here a little bit, what are some effective strategies or tips that parents can use to foster a love for books in their children and strengthen their kids' reading skills?
So really, the very, very first thing is modeling. So children do what they are seeing on a regular basis. And so if we regularly see a parent reading the newspaper or reading online articles or taking regular trips to the library or the bookstore as part of a ritual, that just becomes ingrained in children and they realize, oh, well, reading is an important part of daily life. And encouraging kids, having conversations like when you're driving down the road, having kids point out environmental text. So the big sign for Chick-fil-A or the big message on the billboard, and reading a menu out at a restaurant and reading maps and street signs. I mean, all of these things, we don't really think about it. We are so programmed to be like, oh, let me hold a book and then I'm reading. But obviously, I mean, I read an email today to get to know you and get on your podcast. And so every little thing that we are modeling and showing, and when we're talking about words and talking about text on a regular basis, we're really getting kids to understand the importance of reading as a lifelong skill.
Definitely. Now, I know reading doesn't just entail being able to say or pronounce the words, right? There's so much more to it. There's the comprehension aspect. When parents are modeling reading around their kids and maybe even to their kids, what can they do while they're reading to kind of demonstrate the comprehension that plays into the act of reading too?
So I love this question because, again, the modeling comes into place by seeing and then hearing. And so, yes, just as you alluded to, there are 5 major components to help our kids in reading. And they do come around by read aloud. So whether a parent wants to read to the child or they're reading together or the child is reading to the parent, if you are going to do several things, such as number 1, ask questions before, during, and after reading the book. So right before you open the book, if you're reading a book about a playground, like remind the children the last time you went to the playground or a park, or do you have a playground in your backyard? And, maybe in the story, a child falls off the swing and has an injury. And so we're really trying to use our students and our children's background knowledge and own experiences to increase their understanding of comprehension. And if they fell off a swing and, had to have a giant scar and they had to go to the doctor for stitches, that's going to remain in your brain. And you're going to have greater empathy and understanding for the character because you experienced it yourself. So asking questions and reminding kids of experiences is one thing. The other thing to do is to really model how to read a sentence smoothly with expression, really showing kids the difference between dialogue and facts, how we speak differently, how our voices and our tone may go up and go down, and also really pointing out relationships of words. Oh, wow, I'm noticing this word, pool, rhymes with this word, school. Or, oh, wow, I'm noticing both of these words begin with the same sound. At the very beginning of the word, I hear the t sound, T, in both words. So really modeling language, fluency, and the comprehension is certainly going to make an impact in a 15-minute read aloud experience.
Yes, read alouds were always one of my favorite in my classroom. And for that exact reason, you can just hit so many different skills with one text. And like you said, 15 minutes, that's usually all it takes. That's awesome. So, can you share some practical activities or games that can make reading fun and engaging for children, even for those who may initially be reluctant readers? And why are some students reluctant to read?
So, first of all, no one wants to do anything that is difficult or challenging for them, period. And so, I mean, I even say as an adult, I never learned to ski. We live in Richmond, Virginia. It doesn't snow here now for the last 2 years. And so, do I want to necessarily try that now as a grown adult? No, I am terrified of running into a tree and breaking a leg. So, it's challenging for me. I'm hesitant to want to do that. So it's the same thing for a young child. If something is challenging for you, you don't want to do it and you avoid it. And so if I find that reading particular words on a page are challenging for me, I don't want to do it. If I find that questions, I don't know what I'm reading and I can't explain it, I also don't want to read it. And so the great news is, like, once we teach a child to read, they don't forget how to read. It's like riding a bike, tying a shoe. And so really implementing motivational things is the first step, because if I can't get a child excited about reading, then it really doesn't matter how great my lesson is. I need this child to be engaged and excited about reading. And so in addition to modeling, I love almost tricking children into playing any game that has to do with words. And so some are things that we have lying around our house, right? So Zingo is a popular game for young kids. It helps you do rhyming words. It helps you do different sounds. Scrabble, Boggle. I mean, it's just all of these games involve pictures and sounds and letter tiles where children are manipulating and moving them about. I love having children act out plays. You know, if you wanted to do a reader's theater at home and every family plays a part of a particular nursery rhyme or fairy tale or folk tale, and children are just responsible for reading only their lines as Goldilocks or, as Robin Hood, whatever, play you want to do. But again, it's something easy. It doesn't require a lot of reading. And so it just is building this sense of confidence and really just encouraging play. So play with words, play like what we said earlier, like if you have a menu, play restaurant together with your child or with your siblings, anything that's involving words and play and playing with words and building sentences, all of those things. It's tricking our kids into actually getting excited about reading.
It is, and especially just for those kind of first few baby steps of getting into it. Because, like you said, you don't forget how to read. That's a skill that will stick with you. And, so once these kids get started, it opens them up to all the various pathways that they can go, all the directions they can go in with that reading. Because, sure, you may have students who are, like you mentioned earlier, very sports driven. And so they may stick with kind of the more nonfiction texts about all their favorite athletes and teams. Or
Yeah.
you get the ones who are totally into fiction and they head in the direction of dragons and princesses and knights and everything. So definitely, just like you said, kind of tricking them a little bit into, taking those first steps and diving into initial reading abilities is really the way to go with that. And then there was something else you mentioned earlier about recognizing like signs out there
Mhm.
when, kids are on the road with their parents and they're able to say, hey, McDonald's is coming up, but the only symbol they see are the golden arches. And
Yeah.
I used to use that as a way to encourage my students and build their confidence, because I taught third, fourth, and fifth grade.
Okay.
And I used to have, especially my fourth graders would come up to me and say things like, I don't know how to read. And so I would kind of, call shenanigans on them and say, are you able to let your parents know when McDonald's is coming up on the highway? And they'd be like, well, yeah, I love McDonald's. And I told them, then you can read. So also just instilling that confidence in them is so key too, because you really are so right. No one wants to do something that they think is going to be challenging or that they think they're going to be bad at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So excellent points. How can educators and tutors create a positive and supportive environment that encourages students to develop a love for books and improve their reading abilities?
So, well, first of all, whenever I walk into a home, a tutoring clinic, a classroom, and a school, the first thing I notice is if that environment creates a love of literacy. So, do I see real books? Do I see magazines? Do I see newspapers? Do I see posters? Do I see quotes? Whatever it might be. Like one of my family members was I think it was the dentist last week, and sent a photo to me because there were Dr. Seuss quotes on the wall and books and magazines all on this table. And they just sent it to me and they were like, "You would love this cozy corner." And I'm like, yes. I instantly know walking into this particular doctor or dentist office that they are promoting a love of literacy and the importance of reading. And so I think that is number one. Number two, I love the idea of being a book matchmaker, if you will. So, really getting to know the child that is yours or the child that you are tutoring by simple things. If you're in a classroom, a lot of times we only have time to give you like a questionnaire and you fill out, your favorite number, your birthday, do you have siblings, your favorite food, your least favorite subject, all of these things. But if you can have the time to do a one-on-one like we're doing right now, where I can ask you everything that I want to know about you, that is really going to help me determine the next best book that you should read. And I love how you worked with upper grade students. I loved K1 2 is where I wanted to be, but in reading is across all ages. So I became a K5 reading specialist. And in that position, I was given a lot of 8 and 9-year-olds like you had that didn't love to read, but I found out that they loved basketball, or I found out that they loved tacos. And you can find books that will resonate with them just based on the topic. And it really just comes from building relationships and getting to know each other. Children love to talk about themselves. That's why they have a connection to every single book that we put into front of them. Because even if it's a book about a cat and they don't have a cat, they will tell you that their neighbor has a cat. And that cat looks like this cat in this book. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. So when we can build relationships and provide books that, first of all, reflect their interest, but then also like reflects their community or their neighbor's interest. So maybe someone in their cul-de-sac speaks Spanish. And so they can read a book about a family that has family from Spain or Mexico, or, has a regular tradition of eating like paella, whatever it might be. But we're really trying to make a connection of a book that a child wants to read. And so getting to know what they like and don't like is the first step of just matching them with the best book. And then also, like you mentioned earlier about genres, some kids like sports, some kids like sci-fi, some kids like poetry, some kids don't know what they like because they didn't know anything existed besides nonfiction. And so really exposing children to a variety of genres and topics, that's really going to help us determine the best books to start these children on.
Yes, definitely. And, I've even run into students who are adamant that all they like is video games and they don't want to read about video games. They just want to play video games. So I used to tell their parents, put the subtitles on while they're playing their video games.
Yes.
You know,
Great.
especially
Great.
because those subtitles can be so distracting. So eventually that child's eyes are going to go right down to the subtitles and they will inadvertently be following along while, the character is saying those lines.
I
And
love that.
that helps them with their reading. And then
Absolutely.
also kind of like if you have a child or a student who says, I like video games, and you're kind of like, look at the genre of video games that they're playing, and you may find, similar books that lend themselves well to the same type of genre. Like I know, a lot of students are into, a lot of kids are into things that kind of end up being like detective
Uh-huh.
work and stuff. So,
Mhm.
getting them into the Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew or Cam Jansen, all those books would be
Yes.
great.
And what's so funny that I love that you said is mysteries are actually not always introduced to children.
Mm-mm.
And I encourage parents and teachers to use mysteries in the very, very beginning of the year, especially around October when everything's spooky and creepy,
Yes.
because they teach such higher level thinking skills. And so our children that struggle with comprehension, it's so fascinating to me that even the most reluctant reader in a mystery can tell me who they think the suspect is and when this actually happened and how they think the mystery is going to be solved. And that is all higher level inquiry and inference skills that you're only going to get with some quality text. So I love that you said that, because I do even know that young Cam Jansen was even popular for our first and second grade children until
Yeah.
we move up into the higher level mysteries.
Oh, for sure. And you've also got like Geronimo Stilton and all those
Yes.
too. Yeah, for
Yes.
sure. And those, it builds the intrigue too. There have been students where I have had to almost pry the book out of their hands because it's like, sweetheart, we've got to move on to math or science or whatever. And they are just like, I've got to know who stole the carrot cake or whatever. They're just so enthralled with it. So it
Yeah.
even helps boost their fluency too.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, I I could talk about reading all day. I really could. Um, so to continue, in today's digital age where children have access to various forms of entertainment, how can we kind of find a balance between screen time and reading time? What are some ways to motivate children to choose reading over other activities?
Well, fortunately, I'm in the publishing industry, and so there's surveys come out all of the time. And still, in 2023, when a child below the age of 10 is actually surveyed, they prefer to hold a book in their hand over reading it on the screen.
I love hearing that. That is
Yes.
awesome.
Yes. And it explains why children's books continue to be published and continue to come out, and that series are so popular.
Yes.
So your child, loves a magic treehouse in this destination, you're going to love this one too. I mean, I was visiting some second graders the other day and they were like, Miss Stark, did you know that there's like 5 frog and toads? And I'm like, yes, I did. Did you know there's like 5 elephant and piggies? Did you know there's like 1,000 Berenstain Bears? I mean, this is the whole way that we're getting kids hooked on reading. And obviously, the gaming industry and the movie industry recognize the importance of sequels too. That's why Marvel continues to succeed so incredibly well. But
Yes.
books are doing the same thing.
Hmm.
And so when we, again, it's getting them excited about reading and it's making that connection match. Also, reading on a screen is a different skill from reading in text. There's a difference between skimming and reading. There's a difference between reading just pages and reading with illustrations. And honestly, there is a lot of research that's coming out about on screen reading and the distractions of the additional apps and the pop ups and things like
Yes.
that. And again, it's affecting our comprehension
Hmm.
because it's taking away from the act of reading. It is not lost on me the fact that many of the creators of these platforms don't have their children on them all day long.
Oh man.
Interesting fun fact.
Hmm.
So again, just getting them excited about the books, but then recognizing we are in an age of technology. And so when we read a real book outside and then we come in and read an article online, great. And can you actually figure out the difference in understanding your reading between on the screen and on a text or on a tablet? It's a very different experience.
And that, I mean, when you started off by saying that surveys show kids prefer a physical book, that is
Mhm,
so impactful. I
mhm,
think, with modern technology, a lot of times we become reliant on it and we
mhm.
kind of go, "Oh, here, this will keep you busy," or "This is interesting," or a lot of times it's not even to keep someone busy, we think we're doing what's best for our kids because we're told these apps are educational. They provide, so much enrichment and stuff like that. But a good physical book can provide countless benefits too. And, some of what you mentioned of just being able to sit and focus on it without distractions, without disruptions, without apps dinging at you and, trying to pull you away, or pop-ups that are blocking what you're reading. Ugh.
And it's so interesting. I mean, I have a 4-year-old nephew who walks around the house with this book this big, and it's called Who's the Winner or Who Wins? And literally every page is like, who wins, the hornet or the squid? And then you turn the page and it's the answer. Who wins, the crocodile or, the scorpion? I mean, and he wants to read this book like 5 times a day. It is one of those things that his mother and me and like my dad, and we're all like, Dad, do you want to read another book? Do you want to read another book? But you can't get mad at a child who is so excited to read. And this book has been going with him now everywhere for 2 weeks. And he knows every single animal, every single word, who's next. And that is from a book. And he's a 4-year-old boy. So when you talk about like interest level and engagement, clearly it's the illustrations and the topic of this book that he wants this over the iPad or a show during, throughout the day.
Yeah, you can't fault him. But is there a point where he has been with one book for too long? And what does that look like?
We talk about that because his mom was the same way. And when she was little, and I'm the big sister, she always was like, can you please read Can't You Sleep, Little Bear? And that was not a short book. So I don't know why she didn't want to read Cat in the Hat. But it was always that long book. The thing is, it's a familiarity. Yeah. And the kids are actually increasing their word knowledge and their syntax and their sequential order and understanding of a text when they hear it over and over again. It just becomes familiar. And so we certainly want to encourage that. The great thing about him is while this is his go-to, he can easily be distracted with multiple other titles.
Okay.
This just happens to be his. He thinks it's fun right now to play this game and for all of us to guess who the winner is, even though we're like done it 100 times, so we know the crocodile wins. He still thinks it's a game. But just being able to like pack a bag of books in the car. I mean, I feel like parents are in the car all day long taking multiple children to sports and tutoring and literacy lessons and music classes, and you're spending this much time waiting. You might as well have a bag of books and then a variety of books so that the kids have a bunch of different things to choose from and get excited about reading.
If you enjoyed our discussion today, please like Firefly Tutors on all your social media hubs like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Find us on Pinterest, where we pin all of our favorite resources for parents and tutors. At Firefly Tutors, we believe every student deserves the opportunity to develop to their highest potential. See you next time on The Buzz.